Greetings, rise and shine, brethren. We are the World Global Reset Restoration Network family, comprised of 198 sovereign nations with over 7 billion sovereign principles, being of one mind, one heart, and one spirit, walking together under the divine principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I come to you as a voice in the wilderness to introduce to you a man. No, not just any man, but a man sent by Yhwh Allah to redeem mankind. Dr. HILH Henderson, the Adak Chief Justice of the Universal World Court, and who's also known as Yehoshua Mashiach, the Son of Man. The information that you will be receiving in this and other videos you won't get from anywhere else on the planet. Hear the many truths and fulfillment of the laws, judgments, and sentencings from our Creator, Father Yah, as well as the fulfillment of the true interpretation of the Holy Scriptures and books. Now, without further ado, Dr. HILH Henderson with his beloved host, Shelley Bowling.
I know a lot of you we've been told, at least in America, that Israel, they're the good guys, we're supposed to support them and all of these things. But if you've listened to our calls in the past, we let you know where that nation actually came from. Lord Rothschild actually in 1917 provided funds to Lord Balfour to start this nation. The biggest issue that they were dealing with, the cabal, if you want to call them that, or those global elite families, was that the Middle Eastern nations wanted no part of the central banks. And because they would not allow the central banks into their nation, because they understood the control that they brought in when they came in, they decided to go, they being the cabal, decided to go in and buy up some desert land from some of the nomadic tribes that were in the area. And when they did that, that's when they started going in and being able to infiltrate those nations in other ways. But long story short, Hosni Mubarak understood this and refused to basically play ball with Israel. And so he was removed through the Arab Spring, just so you understand the history there.
The little tiny town, if I might call it that you keep calling Israel. And I need everyone to get this. Perhaps maybe if you give this to someone like Brother Osteen, or perhaps someone possibly like Tony Evans, maybe they can get the word out so everybody will understand that the little town that you keep calling Israel is not Israel. You do not have to say that. Netanyahu, I love you, my brother. You already know. We have been working together now. Let's keep it together. Let's explain to the people. The Israel is not the Israel that everybody is looking for. The Israel that they're looking for is right here in America. It has always been here, always will be. It won't move. Let's put all the continents back together. It will not move. It's still in the center. It's still where it's supposed to be. We need to save those people. Those are the true Hebrew Israelites. And I say to New York, a lot of the Hebrew Israelites left New York a few years back. I would tell them, come back home. Because you are already at home. Yeah, I know. They paid some dollars and they told you it was the greatest trip in the world and they were going to pay for everybody to go back home, and they bought tickets and barbecue parties and block parties and all that kind of stuff. I'm saying to you, Hebrew Israelites, I'm one. Come back home. Come back home. It was a nice gesture, but you need to come back home. The Israel that's over there is Israeli. It is not Israel. And as we lived here, we became known as Jacob. Jacob was Israel. Jacob was an individual who received the promise. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Joseph was the other son. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob being Israel, he was right there in America. He never left America. Had no reason to leave America. No, he wasn't taking Caribbean trips. He was not taking foreign land trips. He was not going across the water. He was perfectly okay at home. What am I doing for my people right now? Giving you the truth. I am telling you that geographically, reality, it comes together. Let me repeat that. Geographic and reality, it comes together. And just as geographic knows, reality knows that it has never moved. It has never went anyplace. And just because a bunch of men got together on Jekyll Island and decided to change the names of places and people and things and stations and banks and, yeah, I put banks in there too. Just because they decided to start naming things that they wanted to name doesn't mean that it changed. Can a leopard change his spots? Just like an Ethiopian cannot change his color. I say to you, a leopard cannot change his spots, and he has not. And just because man has decided to name the spots that is on the leopard's stripes doesn't mean that they're not recorded in the book. Stay with me just a little while longer. The reason I'm doing this is because I need to get people to understand that immigration law is the funniest law that I've heard in my lifetime. Because we got a bunch of people trying to rewrite the law. They ain't trying to go by the law of immigration. They try to rewrite the law of immigration. They're trying to take the indigenous people name and give it to another group of people according to what they want to do based upon who they think they got control over. Wow. These melanated people are getting out of hand. How we can't control them anymore. Now that they done got smart enough to start reading again, they've read our language, they know their language, and now they sound like scientists, they sound like professors, and some of them are even working like that. So we have to hurry up and move this around once again. So now we're going to bring in their Hispanic brothers, the Issacharites. They're known as Issacharites. They're the ones who ride up on the burro. So maybe if we can't change the word Israelites, we'll just change it and give it to the Issacharites, and they won't be able to tell the difference. Not going to happen. They're in the book. They're one of the 12 tribes called Issachar. Issacharites. The one who rides up on the burro. They are from my great country and my great nation. We call it Mexico. Mexico. Yes, and they're my great brothers and sisters. Yes, and we are still one mind, one heart, and one spirit. So you're not going to even be able to jumble us with that. We already know how we sit with each other. They know that we are one. They know that they are part of me because they are part of Yah. They know that they are one of the 12 tribes of Yah. They already know that. So they don't have to be wrestling. They don't have to jockey for a position. They already have their position. Why am I telling everybody all this? Because the earth now is replenishing itself. It's being restored. Not replaced, restored. It's a difference. The government keeps trying to replace everything instead of restoring it. We don't need replacements. We need restoration. We don't need reparation because we're not asking you to pay us for anything that we think or you might think that you have wronged us for. We're telling you to give us what was already ours and get out the way. Because we're going to roll over you. It's already ours. Help me out, my brothers and sisters, for you and those of you that said, well, we've been holding it for this long, so we might as well keep holding. I tell you what, if I give you a firecracker and I light it and you're holding it in your hand, tell me how long you're going to hold it. Let's say dynamite, because some of you, you're bold enough to even try to hold a firecracker long. But I tell you what, let me give you a stick of dynamite and light it. Let's see how long you hang on to that, knowing that it's going to go off. Because that's what's happening right now. But your nation, the United States of America, you have been out lobbying. You have been out lobbying for nations like Israelite, which is not even a nation at all. They're not Israel. Israeli is not Israel. And the Israel that you know of is not even a place. That's the Palestinian nation. That's the Palestinian land. Just as America was the Israelite land. And you came and you changed it. You're trying to change the Palestinian land to be Israel or Israelites, or the Israelis that you're allowing to take it over. But there are people of a lighter persuasion. There are people of the Caucasians that were found to be nothing more than migrants, just like you were. They're immigrants, and most of them are truly your family. They're your would-be so-called heritage. They're your lineage. Yes. And even though now you try to extend some so-called Israeli sovereignty, they can't have sovereignty in somebody else's land. That's not sovereignty at all. You know that this moment in time, we're moving forward for the total peace upon the planet. Where mankind is coming together based upon the fact that he and all mankind must recognize the sovereignty of the universe first. They must recognize the fact that this sovereignty of the universe came from a sovereign God. This sovereign God has given all mankind this sovereignty, whereby now all of the nations are having to recognize this particular sovereignty based upon the rules of law, based upon the laws of the land. We're not just talking this one particular land. Perhaps maybe they believe it's still the land of the Canaanites or Canaan, the land of Canaan. And that's not the laws of the land. Neither did the Canaans or the Canaanites have any particular laws at all. For the laws came from God. And as the Canaanites refused to obey those laws, they themselves were said to have been those in whom God placed under a banishment, where they were to be deleted off the planet, totally annihilated off the planet. Knowing that, given the right to those that were classified as the Hebrew Israelites, knowing that they themselves moved into the land, a land that was promised to them. It was not the promised land, neither was the chosen land until Allah, God of the universe, had given them the commandment to do so. Only then did it become holy land. Only then did it become the land of promise. people who were those people of his own heart, of his own spirit, of his own mind. And only then did we ever, or were we ever able to say that this is classified as Holy Land or the land of promise. Why is the wars raging? And what's the reason for it? That's the question that I normally get. Let me explain something to you. It all boils down to a word. That's a 4-letter word. I know some of your minds probably went in the wrong direction. Let me help you out though. The word that I'm talking about is L-A-N-D. Land. Land. L-A-N-D. 4-letter word. Now, what I'm talking about when I'm speaking about land, and this is the whole entire problem, because back in 1954, I'll go back further. 1954, something took place at the United Nations level that had not happened before. And you had some people that were redeveloping, or should I say they was redistributing at the same time they were changing a lot of things. They were changing things such as names and locations. And upon changing those names and locations, what they did was they confused not just themselves, but they confused everything and everybody that was around them. 1954 was a time of a man by the name of Roosevelt. And it's very obvious that he was very confused, and we won't go into that. That's a whole nother subject that perhaps a lot of people in the United States would probably want to keep that in the family, they would call it. That means that those things that happen inside the house, you don't let anybody know what happened inside the house. They call that keeping it in the family. But it's no surprise, neither is it a secret to the rest of the world. They already know that Roosevelt was definitely confused because he married his own first cousin. So everybody already knows that. They know just how confused he was. Any man that will marry already in a family he's already in, it has to be pretty much confused. And I'm really, right now, I'm not into the spirit, if I might say, of trying to protect him for the wrong in which he was doing. So he was also out confusing everything else, just like they did in 1933. 1933, that was his administration that went to the point of trying to change the monetary system, and they really did a royal messed up job of that. So here we have this person that seems to be so totally confused, and I still don't understand why in the world would the United States of America let a man like this not just hold one term, not just hold 2 terms, but he actually got to hold 3 terms of office. And if we might ever want to say that America had a dictator as a leader, we might want to label him as that one dictator leader that America had. Because not only did he operate like a dictator, but he held the position long enough to be considered a dictator. Either way you look at it, he was a total disaster for the whole universe. So this land problem, this L-A-N-D, this 4-letter word, this land problem that he created and that we have now is what has been on this planet since there was a planet. And all the people did, like Roosevelt did, was they made this problem become worse. They did not try to fix this problem. They did not try to alleviate this problem. They added to the problem. Now, as we talk about the land and what took place during that time, and everybody, you would have to do your research, and I would tell you, yes, there's a lot of hidden secrets within that situation, because these were some of the brothers that considered themselves during his time as brothers of brotherhood. And I don't mean brothers of brotherhood like they wasn't a secret society of goodwill. They was a secret society of what we call hidden truths and a whole bunch of lies. Now, in 1954, they started renaming places. They started renaming places like Israel. First of all, let me make this perfectly clear. When I speak of the word United Nations, I need you to understand that Israel now, which is a location known to me as Israeli, because it is not Israel, it is actually Israeli. And this is why now we have a whole universe of people who believing that a small little bitty area that they have picked out in 1954 and actually gave it its own flags and all of this and put the star, what they call the Star of David on it, put it in white, what they blue Star of David on it, and they call it Israel. That is not Israel. The land is not even Israel land. The reason I know that because Israel land is right here where I'm at now. It is there in the United States. It has always been here in the United States, and it always will be here in the United States. And the majority of the people once was residing in a place called New York City. So I already know what a true Israel is at. And those of you that are still confused, let me help you out. It is not Israeli. And the reason I'm bringing this up this morning in the United Nations call, so the United Nations can realize and recognize that we have all of the nations around the world, and they believe that right now, if we all want to be saved by Yhwh, Y-H-W-H, the God of the universe, if we want him to save us, they are trying to get the people to believe that they must protect and they must save this little area over there that they're calling Israel, based upon their own analysis, based upon their own calculations, based upon what they have created themselves to be that land. This is man's land that they're talking about. It has nothing to do with God's land. And those are not God's land. Those are not God's people. They're just some of his children. That's what they are. But they're not his true people, his blood, because they reside in the United States of America. They always have been there. They always will be there. Now, I'm not just saying that because that just happens to be where I reside. I can say to you that DNA and RNA testing can prove that. The people of the true blood of the one descent, they are in America, always have been there, and have never moved. They have been in captivity at some time. They have been in slavery for some time, and some of them are still in slavery to this day. Some of them have been labeled African American, but they have never been to Africa, and they created America themselves. So they can't be neither one of those. But however, that's the label that they've been given, the majority of them. We have one mechanic running around trying to now apologize for who he is and where he came from, if he might be of the Hebrew Israelites, a true Hebrew. And yet still he's apologizing to the Jews, Anunnaki Jews at that, who still don't know who they are because they're still waiting for their blood, DNA, and RNA. And the only reason now they're holding on, or they were holding on to that name, is because they believe that it carried some sort of finance behind it. But now that they realize that there's no finance nowhere on the planet, they are now beginning to second thought and second think where they came from. Pretty soon, they will give up that long story about being a Jew, because they themselves are going to realize that Jews don't exist on this planet. Never have, never will. It's been good, though. It's been a great ride. It's rolled all the way from Great Britain. It's rolled around through Germany. It's rolled from there, and it even found itself sliding into little small areas of the unknown world, which is known as third world countries. It's found itself there. And everybody has been feeling sorry for them, crying and saying that we need to build a memorial to them. Obviously, no one is reading the holy books. It tells them that they will stop building those holy so-called monuments to people who truly don't exist. Most of the people who classified to be Jews have never read the Holy Bible, because had they read it, they would have realized that even in the book of John, there's a lady at the well. She's known as a whore, in case you haven't read the story yet, so let me just get through the main part of it. So you understand, she was nothing more than a whore at the well, and she was being there for one reason, because she was watching all of the men that would stop in, and every last one of them that would stop in, they were doing nothing more than helping her water her with the animals. Stay with me. So by the time her Jesus the Christ came to the well, she had a whole bunch of questions for him. Most of her questions were all about those of you who still call yourselves Jews. She talked to him about the Jews. And even he himself told her, Jews? The Jews are those that say that they're in Jerusalem. He says, but what place is that? He says, even on this mountain, this is neither Jerusalem, neither is it a place where the people come to worship the Father. He says, we know what we worship. For salvation, he says, is truly of those you call the Jews. He said, but the hour is coming, and now it is when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship him. For he says God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. In other words, who are these Jews that you keep talking about? What makes them so special? Are they hard to recognize? What made them so special? Especially when the book even reads that those who crucified Christ were of their origin, their blood type. And no one still dared call them Jews. So they wasn't his people. He wasn't from them. He told them that. It's obvious that you're not reading and listening to the story. Even Paul the apostle told them he was not a Jew. Yes, once he said, I said I was. That was only that I might have my life spared for that moment. He said, but then I realized that I had no understanding of what a Jew really was. Let me help you out. Unless you can get into the head of one that is known as Adolf Hitler, you're never going to truly know what he meant by Jews, because that term didn't come about as strong as it has been written down. All of the rewritten manuals and strips that now has been placed upon those tables that they call holy tables, they wasn't even properly written until they came from one known as Adolf Hitler. Stay with me. Don't test me. Just go and do your research for yourself and